हेलो एवरीवन, वेलकम टू माय चैनल। आज हम करेंगे द प्रीलूड। ये यूनिट 29 है, MEG 1 है एंड ब्लॉक 6 है। इसमें हमने काफ़ी पार्ट्स कर रखे हैं ऑलरेडी। तो ये अब 29 में अब हम द प्रीलूड करेंगे। यूनिट 29 में द प्रीलूड स्टार्ट कर रहे हैं। लेट स्टार्ट। Wordsworth kept on working on the Prelude, his longest poem throughout his life, writing, rewriting it, often copying it, changing, rearranging, and revising it, but never published it during his lifetime. Though it is a complete poem, a complete statement, he always cherished the thought that it was only a prelude to a much longer poem, The Recluse, which he could never finish. The prelude is much longer than the unfinished poem whose prelude it was intended to be. This caused embarrassment in the poet, and it is perhaps one of the reasons that he could never publish the prelude. The poem has a complicated textual history. The poet worked on it at intervals for more than 40 years. The first drafts were written in 1798 and the last full-scale revision was made in 1839. In 1799, a short version of the poem was published in two parts. In 1805, Wordsworth wrote the whole of it but did not give the poem a name. It was just a poem to Coleridge. Wordsworth wanted to hear a few words of appreciation from his friend so that he could go happily with the composition of the Recluse. The 1850 Prelude is the outcome of three large-scale reworking of the poem and many minor revisions. The poem was finally printed just 10 weeks after Wordsworth's death. In stylistic quality, the 1850 poem is very different from the 1805 one. Continuous revision improved it quite a lot. In this unit, we are to discuss the final version of the poem, जो कि 1850 में publish हुआ था. The 1805 Prelude has 13 books, whereas the final version has 14. The first book has the title Introduction, Childhood and School Time. And the last book is the conclusion, which comes just after the book on imagination. The Prelude is a landmark in English literary history because it is a stupendous work. बहुत ही बढ़िया काम था. The significance of which reveals itself to successive generation in various ways. The subtitle of the Prelude, Growth of a Poet's Mind, is also very significant. Romanticism in Europe was a much varied thing, but one thing was common in all literatures of the time, that is psychological exploration. The human mind, all romantic writers believed, was the center of the divine scheme, the arena of the struggle of good and evil. It is a strange thing, and each discovery of its inner recesses is a thrill. And the poet has a richer mind, more sensitive and dynamic than anybody else. In its creativity, it is like God, and therefore the study of the growth of a poet's mind is not only a thrill in itself, but also religious pursuit, a study in Godhead. The human mind is the arena of all tragedy and comedy, of all history. The sense on which is played out the continual drama of fall and redemption. From childhood to adulthood, his mind, through its experience and response, achieves maturity, a shape and a dimension, sensitivity of perception and intensity of feeling. In a poet's case, the acquisition is greater than in anybody else's case. Man's moral being depends on how the mind has worked and from which source it has drawn its sap. The poet remembers past incidents and their impact on his mind. Now, the prelude is about the poet himself, and so it is biographical. It is about the nature and functions of the human mind, so it is psychological. It gives certain definite moral conclusions, so it is didactic. It is about the infinite power and harmony of nature, so it is spiritual. It is an attempt to define the role and potentiality of imagination, so it is intellectual. Even with all these aspects of the prelude, one often doubts its social relevance, its relation to its time and topical issues. But we must remember that the prelude is a poem of self consciousness and search for identity, written at a time when entire Europe, reeling under the nightmare of Napoleon onslaughts, was looking for a stable identity and a solid value system. In this sense, the Prelude is the most representative work not only of English Romanticism but also of European experience and its romantic idealism. Now, W.J. Harvey goes to the extent of saying, वो बोलते हैं, the world of the prelude is not just the world of the mind communing with nature. It is also the world of the university, the metropolis, and the arena of power and politics. Wordsworth spent the whole of his lifetime to perfect the poem, which in its turn absorbed all new ideas and experiences that came to the poet and finally became a solid body of poetic work that has embodied the history of humanity, standing on the crossroad of selfishness and humanism, science and imagination, adventure and utilitarianism, materialism, spiritualism. The prelude is humanity's last and most fervent attempt to discover pure joy in life. The poem is an autobiography. As a chronological narrative, the poem is an account of the growth of the poet's mind up to the point at which he conceives the recluse in 1798. Through revisions from 1798 to 1805, the poem took a shape and character which was different from what it was when the poem was conceived. Naturally so, because Wordsworth, who began the prelude, was not the Wordsworth who finished it. The first two parts deal with his childhood and boyhood experiences, and in the subsequent parts, the growth of the mind is emphasized upon. The experience of his early life had remained stored in his mind, and he went to France to have direct contact with the revolution, saw the towns and cities in both France and England, heard with pain the still sad music of humanity, came back to England, and his friends realized the most fundamental truths of life and formulated his philosophy of nature. सो थैंक यू सो मच, प्लीज़ सब्सक्राइब माई चैनल. नेक्स्ट वीडियो में द प्रिल्यूड हम बुक 1 करेंगे, इसके आइडिया के बारे में पढ़ेंगे. थैंक यू.